and give a warm welcome to all of our communities. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. If you've just joined us, you haven't missed much, but just a little warm-up quiz to get us all thinking about our young people in this digital world. We'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land here, where Carly and I present, and the lands across the country where we work and live. Pay our respects to elders, both past and present. A little reminder, it is an adult session this evening, 18 plus. We do not encourage kids to be listening. We're going to cover some really big, heavy topics and challenges and risks that we want to share with adults, parents and carers, but not with the kids themselves. The replay will be available. All the slides will be available. Anything that we've covered tonight, we will turn over to your school community so that you can, number one, revisit it yourselves if you're watching live, but importantly, share it on with other members of your community to watch as well. Who are we? Who are these two voices chatting to you this evening? I'll kick it off with myself, who you've already heard yabbering away. My name's Marty, and primary school teaching has been the last 15, 16 years of my life, and someone who really loves technology, to be honest, really embraces it in both the education setting and personally. So understand it deeply, but also understand the risks and challenges. And my role today and in 2024 is around educating kids, primary school age students, including all of the communities joining us. So we're really proud that our partnership with each school this evening is not just talking with all you as parents and carers, but also the students each and every term having some learning that is live streamed into their classrooms, led by myself and a team of teachers. So lots of the insights I'll share tonight come from all of those partnerships with schools that we hear firsthand from educators themselves, parents, carers and principals. Joining me, who I will mute my mic in a moment and allow to jump in, welcome Carly, who does happen to be my sister.
Thank you, Marty. Good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, who am I? Tonight in speaking with you, I guess I'm wearing two main hats. The one hat that I never get to take off ever, like all of you, is as a parent. And I've got 3 children, all secondary school as of this year, my youngest in year 7. So every little bit of this session this evening are things that I am personally navigating in my household moment by moment. I've had discussions around parental controls being on a phone and my youngest not wanting them on her phone this week. I've had discussions around pornography with one of my sons. So endlessly in the midst of this, in the trenches with all of you. The other hat that I wear in speaking with you this evening is as a psychologist, and I've worked for the last 20-something years in a whole lot of different contexts and want to share with you what we know and understand at this point in time about kids, young people, their development, brains in this digital space. And also to give you an opportunity to hear what I hear from the young people that I work with about their experiences being online. This little image here, I guess, is my little shout out to you, just to remind you there are no perfect families out there, no magic unicorn families that have got this all sorted. That are finding this easy. And I'm certainly not coming from the place of, I've got it all sorted at home and I'm here to tell you all what you need to do. You saw that word cloud with all those words that as a parenting, carer, educator community, we are on the same page with feeling this to be challenging to us. And we know that each and every one of your families are so different. You've got such different personal challenges that you as a parent might be managing right now. We know that each of you have different children with different interesting brains. But tonight's really designed as an invitation from us to you to create that healthier, safer online experience for your child and to build upon whatever you're already doing in your family, in your home. So one thing I'd love you to do tonight is just to take a moment to pause and reflect on yourself as a parent in this space. When did you last allocate 90 minutes to pause and reflect about where you're at? Where's your family tracking with regard to this? There is a lot of information that Marty and I want to share with you tonight. And what I often suggest when I'm presenting is, by the end of the session, can you just consider, even write it down on a scrap of paper, type it into your phone, just one thing that you'll choose to start doing. You might hear something from Marty and I, something that you'll take away, that you'll begin to experiment in your home. Try it out, see how it feels for you and your kids. One thing that you'll pause, one thing that on reflection you realise, no, we need to stop that. That's not okay. That's no longer working in our family. And the last one, something to keep going with, something to recommit to that you're already doing. And again, on reflection, you realise your kids need you to keep showing up in that way. Most likely it's not going to be something that's easy or fun for you to do, but you know that's what they need. Marty's going to get started with that content around supporting you in better understanding the risks, and then I'll jump in and out, but particularly with the second half of this evening with regard to managing how we can show up with our kids in this space to best support them.
Thanks, Carly. So we're going to deep dive into the risks and challenges. I said before, there's amazing benefits, there's amazing opportunity in the online world, and we unpack that through our learning and our digital technology subjects at school and in the home space as well. But tonight is really about diving into the challenges and risks so that you best understand them, and then, as Carly will also explore, how to manage them as well. So let's start with consuming. If we're talking about how we consume online, I've just lost my screen's gone inopportune time, disappeared off here. One tick.
Looks all good for me watching on, Marty.
Yeah, thanks, Carly. I'm just going to repower that. At my end, it's given up the ghost. It's coming back on. Apologies, everyone. Love a bit of tech dramas, and we're back. Awesome. Consuming. If we talk about our young people spending time online, a lot of it is spent not necessarily interacting, but consuming with others, consuming content. So if we think about the content they consume, I want to start by unpacking social media. So social media is, you can see on there, TikTok is a big place where kids go, and understanding it, I think, is a huge part of making decisions that are going to support your family and your young people. So the first one is understanding features such as the infinite scroll. So the moment they're in a space like this, they've got access to videos that, as you can see, I'm gesturing here. When you scroll up to the next video, there is no end to the content. And straight away, that puts them in a space of really finding the content challenging, what's coming next, how long am I spending on here? And they're all designed in a way that are deliberately armed, and the goal of social media is to have them on longer. This is adults, young people. So a big part of this is also what they're watching is algorithm dominated, which fancy language to say that when they scroll up and any user scrolls up, the next video they see is not something they're choosing. It is something that the app themselves is suggesting to you, which means, as I like to describe it, it's a little wheel of lucky dip, a wheel of fortune. What's coming next? Some of it will be relevant. Some of it will be age appropriate. A lot of it falls into that adult category because these platforms are not made for young people in any way, shape or form. So consider in the offline space the scenario that if you placed your kids in a room somewhere and there was a TV, you weren't quite sure what was going to be played on there. Someone else had control of what they were going to play and you were comfortable with that. It's probably pretty absurd for any parent to go, yeah, that's something I would give the tick of approval to. But in the online space, and when the content they're watching is very much algorithm dominated, it very much changes what they're watching. And more importantly, they're not in control of those choices. They call it the For You page. So understanding some of the terminology tonight, hopefully, is a little takeaway. They call it the For You page. And you can see there is a search button. See the top, like any app, there's a search. I wanted to just highlight how deliberate the coercion used by these apps to have you watching what they want you to watch. So look at these 3 screenshots here. These were taken, as you can see, by topic there. A couple of weeks ago, the tragic situation that unfolded in Bondi. The first screen shows the search bar. So I went to the search bar just to sort of see what was trending on TikTok. And you can see before I've typed a letter, have a look how those grey letters are basically suggesting what it is that I should be searching for at that point in time. And the first thing on the list, this is without me even putting a thing in, the videos that were straight away coming up there. So just a reminder that once they're in this space, anything that's trending and popular is automatically, whether it's adult friendly, child friendly, somewhere in the middle, suitable, in line with your family values, all of those, you don't have, unfortunately, the control over what your kids are seeing through the search, which is a common place where they'll go to look. Another one just to highlight with TikTok, particularly now, what they've done is change the way you can access it. You no longer need the app even. You're able to just go directly to the web, Chrome, Safari, and just hit tiktok.com. Not even log in, and just hit continue as a guest. So for many families, they might have restrictions on what apps kids can download, which is fantastic. We don't want kids downloading each and every app. But unfortunately now, just having simple access to the web now, hitting on tiktok.com, and you've got access to each and everything. So please consider that just when you're thinking about where kids use devices, how the supervision works, where and when they're using them, because that curiosity around TikTok is so accessible now, even without the app. And when I've referred to TikTok here, it's the most popular platform, but very hot on its heels is YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts is now in primary schools probably neck and neck, I should say, in popularity, probably because as parents and carers, we're a little bit more across the fact that TikTok's a pretty toxic place at times, very adult in the content, whereas YouTube, it's been around a while, it's got a little bit more trust, but YouTube Shorts is a very different, it's built into YouTube, but it is those same short form videos. Instagram has Reels, and Snapchat has Spotlight. So they're all forms of short form video, which even to describe all of those as social media is a little bit of a misnomer because of the fact that there's not anything that's really social about them. It's scrolling, it's consuming, but it's still something we need to be aware of and use the info you've heard tonight to help guide your decision making about when you're giving the green light to these platforms. Because Carly and I tonight, we're not under the illusion that it's a never ever and just black ban them until they're 21 and out of your influence, but it's about holding off, slowing down, number one, and preparing them to be in this space because they will be at some stage. The content there, I always like to just share snapshots because if you're not on these platforms like I am, you're not seeing the sort of content that comes up in the, as I said before, the lucky dip, the wheel of fortune of what content can be seen. Very adult at times, sexualized, graphically violent. A lot of disturbing body image related, whether it's men or women, about how bodies should look. Carly will circle back to that topic around body image and the online world because it is a big topic, and particularly in Carly's field, you can imagine some of the conversations. Andrew Tate in the middle is another one just to, if you're not familiar with Andrew Tate as a parent and carer of a young person, do yourself a favor and have a little bit of a Google round because the language he uses and the influence is becoming very widespread. Without going into all the details, a really toxic individual, misogynistic, really extreme views, but really popularized in the online world. The last screenshot there, you can see that OnlyFans is finding its way and flooding short form video. Now, OnlyFans is a separate website, but creators on OnlyFans, where you can sell your own pornography, your own self-made videos and photos. It's a subscription page, OnlyFans, so you need a credit card, you need to pay to have access. But what we're finding more and more is users are looking to TikTok and YouTube Shorts to grow their fan base, their popularity with hypersexualized content that then in the in the descriptions under the videos, the captions, it's always a reference to come over to OnlyFans and subscribe, pay for more access. So being aware that this all lives in these short form video platforms. And we often get asked, well, isn't there sort of a more junior version, or can't you restrict the restrictions? There, I will talk about some that are there and available, but they're very limited. All of these platforms, it is a one in, all in approach, unfortunately. You can't just sort of section off the really awesome, amazing content that does live. There's some really great, entertaining, funny, worthwhile content that lives on there, but it can't be separated, unfortunately. The minimum age, social media, short form video, there is a minimum age, and it is 13. You need to be 13 to sign up and create an account for TikTok, for Snapchat, for Instagram. The list goes on. But just for your own understanding, that 13 plus is not a rating. It is really a baseline minimum legal age that they can collect the data from an individual. The 13 is not to be confused with a rating like we would with MA 15 plus. We know what that means. We're all familiar with ratings, but for social media, there is no actual rating given to it. People often ask, so what's the rating or what's the age? As you saw before, the content is so varied and diverse on there that you can't pinpoint that this is PG or MA or a 13 plus content. So it's really about you and the conversations and each individual child making a call. Okay, there's a little quick snapshot for the first little part of this evening about social media, and hoping that that will guide some decision making, or, as Carly suggested at the beginning, maybe change and help you shape some new decisions. If we're talking gaming now, the two ones we always highlight with primary school audiences, because we know they're being played readily, often with older siblings or older cousins, family in the home. Grand Theft Auto, GTA, Call of Duty, COD, MA, R-rated games. If we're talking consuming, we have to look broadly at our kids' screen time. What are they consuming? And often in school settings, we see the fallout of kids who are playing these MA, R-rated games that are developmentally so far out of the spectrum of our primary school age kids, and we see the fallout and the behavior, the language that comes from these content. So it's a reminder tonight just to revisit, and at times it might be, as Carly will attest to, staying firm to some of the boundaries, knowing what's best for your young people. The game right now I want to talk about a little bit more is ROBLOX. It is the most popular gaming option for kids from prep to grade 6, moving into secondary school even, which is a little bit bonkers to think that you've got 6-year-olds and 12-year-olds all interested in, and teenagers all interested in the one game. And those of you who know ROBLOX know that I'm actually not being overly truthful there. It's not a game itself. ROBLOX is, for your own understanding, a platform with millions of games. You can see there on the screen, there's 40 million games to choose from. Many of them have next to no players, but the more popular games have thousands and millions of players simultaneously interacting and gaming together. So what we know is with all those games, and to be clear, all the games are made by other players. That's important to understand. They're not made by ROBLOX. They're made by other players. And you can see there, I went on a little screenshot frenzy earlier in the year just to highlight the level of games that are available. There are lots of child-friendly ones, but there are also lots of very adult themed, as you can see there. And they all live in the same ROBLOX. There's not an overage and an underage version of ROBLOX. There are some settings, which I'll come back to later this evening, which I think are absolutely essential, that do help minimize access to these sort of games. But the default settings, you can have a look for yourself. We'll have all of those that you can see on the screen and more available. Finally, the last little piece of this consuming puzzle that we wanted to highlight is around adult content, explicit pornographic material that we know, unfortunately, is being seen by more and more young people. And primary school, as you can see there, primary school is the predominant age when children are first exposed to pornography. So that's why we use that phrase there, not if, but when. I'm going to play a little video here, which is a New Zealand advert from a number of years ago now, but it uses our good old mates across the ditch, their sense of humour, which is brilliant, to tackle a really serious topic. And I'll invite Carly to unpack it once we have had a little look.
Hiya, I'm Sue. This is Derek. We're here because your son just looked us up online, to watch us.
Matt, darling, there's some people here to see you. So he watches you online?
Yeah, on his laptop.
iPad, PlayStation.
His phone, your phone.
Smart TV, projector.
Yeah, anyway, we usually perform for adults, but your son's just a kid. He might not know how relationships actually work. We don't even talk about consent, do we? No, we just get straight to it.
Yeah, and I'd never act like that in real life.
Nah. Hey, Maddie. You right?
Okay, Sandra, stay calm. You know what to do here. All right, Maddie. It sounds like it's time to have a talk about the difference between what you see online and real-life relationships. No judgment.
Many young Kiwis are using porn to learn about sex. Keep it real online. Get help and advice at keepitrealonline.govt.nz.
Okay, so usually parents in our audiences do get a bit of a giggle out of that. Can you even imagine that turning up on your doorstep? We don't share it for the giggles. We share it because it is really a great little summary, if you like, of some of those core presenting issues of our children and young people being exposed to and watching pornography, especially from such a young age. That first, that primary point that they raise about how readily accessible pornography is. So basically, any child that has access to an internet-enabled device, access to a browser of any description, very quickly can be accessing that content. And it might be like one of my boys who came home from school because a friend said to him, look up www.pornhub and you can see this and this and this. It might be that someone at basketball practice shows them a phone and says, hey, check this out. I want to just read something with you. Whether or not you came across this article, it was really hard hitting, and it's something that I wish every single parent, carer and educator could hear. Are you worried about your child becoming I'll start again. Are you worried about your child being uncontactable for half an hour between school and home? You should provide them with a smartphone capable of streaming hardcore pornography directly into their developing brains every minute that they get left alone for the entire duration of their most formative years. So I guess it's a bit of a shout out via that article from me to you that us as parents really need to step up when we're making choices about how we're allowing our kids to be using devices. The other consideration which was raised in that video is the lack of consent. We know that the majority of pornography is not depicting healthy relationships. In fact, the majority of pornographic material depicts violence, aggression, particularly towards women. We know that there's this extreme and violent acts that are being normalized in that content. So the young people that I work with, I can think of a client earlier this week who we were discussing his porn addiction, consuming all that content, as Marty said, soaking in all that material impacts young people, their views, their ideas, their understanding of what a healthy relationship looks like. It distorts that. Something really confronting, but I'll share with you because I said at the start, I want you to hear about some of the experiences that I'm hearing from young people. Young men that I work with, young adults, thinking that choking a female partner is okay. And isn't that what all women want? Where do you think they got that idea from? These are young men that have been left unsupervised, allowed on devices and watching enormous amounts of pornography, unbeknown to parents, for years and years. What I love in that video, that mum, do you remember? She just took that deep breath, no judgment, we need to talk. So kids being curious about all things sexuality, let's be really clear, is a normal, usual part of development for children, particularly as they're starting to head into pre-puberty, puberty. So that curiosity, I was explaining to a mum the other day who said to me, but what happens if you find your child watching pornography or you realize they have? What's the best consequence or punishment to stop them. And what I was explaining to her is because of that natural curiosity, we don't want to get into shaming kids, telling them that they're bad for being curious about such content. As I said, particularly if somebody else is showing it to them, particularly they might just Google, boobs, bums, sex, something, but then they don't even understand what sort of content they might end up exposing themselves to, let alone someone else exposing them to. So it's really about having conversations, because we want our kids to get healthy, accurate messaging around all things sexuality. We want to be their main educators. We don't want pornography to be that. We want information given to them that's aligned with our family views and values. I'll jump in a bit later and definitely talk more about how to show up and have some of those conversations. And back to Marty for now.
Back. Let's jump into it. It's always good fun sorting technology live on air with hundreds of parents around the country. Who doesn't love that? Okay, let's talk interacting, and we've spoken consuming. Interacting's around who are our kids communicating with in the online space. Often it's their friends. Often it's communicating with their group of friends from school or extracurricular. I want to share Discord because it's an app that we're seeing more and more of in upper primary school, particularly. Used for messaging, so it's a bit different to short form video in the sense that the main purpose is communicating, but not only can direct message happen, but group messaging. Importantly, there's something to be aware of. It's a place where there is a lot of public discussion. So big chat rooms, big groups of discussion that publicly anyone can join in. Some of them are about very adult content. Some of them are about gaming. They can be anything, but the important thing is anyone can talk to anyone on there. So being aware, it's rated 17 plus in the App Store for a reason at their own bequest. So just being aware of Discord and the age suitability would be very much something to keep an eye on. Disappearing messages is another place that our kids very much head to communicate with friends. What we know to be true in primary school, and this is one of these big cases of just slowing down and not yet, because of the risk that we know when kids are in a space where they know the messages disappear. If you think about it this way, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old brain, can you imagine being given magic superpowers where something you do, send a photo, send a message, and it's gone in 5 seconds, like no consequences? That's the mindset our young people get themselves into in the Snapchat world. But we know as adults, absolutely there are consequences for what you say, what you share, and simply someone else taking a screenshot of an image can cause catastrophic situations because kids aren't thinking through those consequences and the fallout. So please, there's lots of conversations to have with kids before they're ready for a space like Snapchat, where messaging and that digital space needs to be unpacked before they're dropped, for lack of a better word, into a space where the messages are disappearing, and that's not the reality. Speaking of being in a digital space with friends, often this brings up the topic of cyberbullying. So I'm going to invite Carly just to unpack this topic again, because it is definitely one that we get asked about and a concern of many parents.
Thank you, Marty. You all know about bullying. Cyberbullying, I guess, has a very different layer to it. And one of the biggest differences is the capacity for that bully to access that other child 24/7. So only earlier this week, working with a client who's about my age, mid-40s, and reflecting on her experience of being bullied in primary school and how she could escape at the end of the day and how much she lived for weekends and school holidays to get away from what was going on. But what we know to be true about cyberbullying is that capacity, as I said, for that barrage of messaging, whatever's going on, to follow them day, night, day after day, weekend, school holidays. So the intensity of it is very, very different. Now, Marty and I debated about sharing this audio file with you. It's of a young person, primary school age, sharing her experience of being cyberbullied. We discussed it because did we want to share it with you because it is so distressing to hear? But yes, we decided to because we want you to know and understand what I hear from the young people that I work with about their experience of being cyberbullied. you get to know in listening to this young person that there was a really good outcome for her because she did reach out for support. What I hope you get out of this is knowing and having this greater understanding. It will support you in stepping up in making tough decisions, unpopular decisions, withstanding your child if they're not already finding you annoying and hating upon you for your decisions. You might hear me say a number of times tonight, it is literally our job to step up and make decisions in line with what our kids need and not what they want. And they need us, as Marty said, to slow down their exposure, to slow down, allowing them on apps like Snapchat, slow down in handing over phones, particularly without restrictions. So I'll play this and then I'll jump back in to talk to that a little bit further.
Where do I even start to try and explain what it was like? It really just started with a couple of random mean messages from a friend. Well, I guess she wasn't really my friend. I was so upset, kind of shocked even, but I thought that if I just ignore it, maybe it will stop. I was wrong. It got so much worse. She made a group chat without me, and some of them started messaging me mean things as well. I felt like everyone hated me. Some of the worst messages that I still remember were, "Go kill yourself, imagine being fat, ugly and stupid. If we never saw you again, no one would even care." There were so many messages some days. Some kids didn't actually send messages, but they didn't stand up for me either. I don't know if the mean messages hurt more, or finding out that I was being excluded from group chats and plans. I felt like I had no one. I started feeling so stressed all the time. I felt sick every time I checked my phone, but I was obsessed with checking, wondering what would be next. I kind of started to believe what they were saying about me. I felt worthless.
So hard to hear. As I said to you, that young person reached out to Kids Helpline, and I'll talk more about that as an awesome resource for your kids and young people to access. One thing I just wanted to say is so many times parents say to me, "But Carly, I don't want my kid to miss out socially." And that's why I think I want to give them access to Snapchat. That's why I've already given them access to Snapchat. As you heard there, that exclusion happens online. It is a mechanism of cyberbullying. So it's just not as simple as, if I just let my kid on it, then they'll be okay socially. In fact, as Marty's pointed out, and I'm now reiterating with you, you can put them in scenarios that they're just not ready yet for and create a lot more big problems for them. And they don't have the skills and capacities yet. And as Marty said, the slowing down gives us that opportunity as parents to build those skills and capacities and have those conversations. Okay, I'll let Marty continue on and jump back in a bit later.
Thanks, Carly. Coming through, am I loud and clear? Hopefully.
Yes, all good.
Yes, awesome, thank you. Interacting with peers, we've just unpacked there with a couple of layers. Interacting with AI is one we do need to start to talk about, because lots of platforms have some ability to chat with AI, Snapchat being one of them. You can see here lots of young people are finding Snapchat as their first way where they interact, because in fact Snapchat put an AI, my AI, they called it, as the number one friend, top of your friend list last year for every single user. And curiously, you cannot even delete it. And it will, as we've heard now recently from a lot of users, it pops up as like a little suggested, like, have you spoken with, or asking, do you want to have a chat? So what we're having to navigate now as parents and carers is talking about AI. What is it? Getting some understanding, even if you don't have a clear definition yourself, but exploring it together. ChatGPT can be accessed now without logging in, so kids are curiously heading there. But we would much prefer they head there with an adult, and you can go on there to plug in questions and have a bit of fun with it, get it to tell you jokes, and have those chats around, who is it and how does it give our answers back, so that when they do have those chats without you there, they've at least got some of that guiding influence, rather than, as we're seeing now, a lot of kids using it without any conversations and thinking it is perhaps someone else, or who is it, getting really out of their depth and using it as a pseudo counselor at times and asking really personal questions and relying on whatever, whoever they are thinking is at the other end of this. So it's about conversations, as Carly will circle back to. The last one is interacting, and this is where we're going to talk about people online who are looking to hurt or harm our young people. And these might be more typically strangers. They might even be people who are known to our young people, which is something we also need to talk about. Any space where there is communication, any space where there are multiplayer games, chat functions, we have to consider that is a space where there will be predators. So we'll use that word to describe anyone online looking to hurt or harm our children or teens or tweens. ROBLOX, Fortnite are two of the biggest examples where there is chat, where there's the ability to message, and we need to be conscious of that. Within ROBLOX, we know that messaging is a big part. Often it's messaging friends, but absolutely with usernames and the ability to interact with anyone, we know there are adults there. Guaranteed your child is playing ROBLOX with adults. What we know is, unfortunately, this scenario came to us, which is not uncommon, where adults engage with kids on ROBLOX if there is messaging capabilities. And I'll come back to those settings that you can disable the chat. That's an important thing to understand with ROBLOX, or you can have it open slather. Social media. So we've spoken about social media at length. You're also not only the content that they can view on social media, but they've got a direct message inbox, meaning there'll be suggested people in there. Kids are famously accepting friendship requests from anyone because it's interesting and curious. And we know that's another avenue for predators to be accessing our young people. So tonight, you're all here, like anyone, with young people in their care to protect our kids, to keep them safe, to educate them. So we need to know the risk exists. You're hearing it right now, but also understanding it. In a concise summary as to how most commonly this occurs, we can refer to this as sextortion, where online a direct message conversation begins. It might start on ROBLOX or in Fortnite, but it'll often end up on Discord or Snapchat because they'll encourage them to download or access another account. Of course, the person at the other end doesn't profess who they are generally. It's using a fake account, a fake profile. Very quickly, they'll have conversations and very formulaically get information from a young person, very quickly gain the trust, and then they'll ask for something compromising. Often that's images, taking a photo that's slightly embarrassing, that's sexualized in a way that they can then threaten to share it. And they've got little bits of information to say that, oh, I'm going to share this with the whole of the East Malvern community because they know that child is from there because of something they've given away, something in the photo with the school logo, some little piece of the puzzle that they've used to make those threats really real. And once a child feels threatened, if they haven't had conversations, if they don't understand that they've got places to go, we know, unfortunately, that is where kids find themselves. When I say kids, teens, tweens find themselves in really tricky situations that can become extreme. So conversations with our young people and devices, as we'll circle back to later, out of private spaces for primary school kids, devices in communal areas. Okay. I'm going to pause there because that's a pretty heavy part of this evening, my first part, and it is about the risks and challenges. Just reminding at the beginning, I did also say about the amazing opportunities, but tonight was the risks and challenges. And before you run off and look to unplug the Wi-Fi and maybe get the modem and boot it over the fence, we're not all about that tonight. We want to pause for a tick, and I'm going to invite Carly for the second part of this evening to really dig a bit deeper into knowing everything you've just heard. How do we move forward to keep our kids healthier and safer?
Okay. So take a breath. It's a lot to hear. Some of it might be really new information. Some of it might be reminders and a pause and reflection of what you already understand. Just reminding you that this is an opportunity tonight, as I said, to reflect and maybe reset based on the information. Reset what's going on in your family. So what I've put up here is a list of, in the offline world, things that I know you've probably done in the last 2 weeks to keep your kids safer and healthier offline. I could probably add another 25 things, to be honest, that you've done, that you've actioned, that you've had a conversation about with your child to keep them safe and healthier. But if I ask you in your family, what's the list of things with regard to keeping your kids safer and healthier online? What have you talked about? What have you actioned? What have you put in place in the last 2 weeks? What I know is, working with so many families and talking with so many school communities around Australia, is there wouldn't be many, if anything's on that list. Some may be a little bit more than others. So what I really want to encourage you tonight is to use those skills you've already got. You know how to have conversations. You know how to step up in that parenting space and apply that to the online space. We can't afford to be out of it. We can't afford to put our head in the sand. Even that language, online, offline, that's like an old person's language to use. Our kids don't talk about, oh, my online friend or my offline. For them, all things digital, all things screens are just woven into their world. They don't know any different. I had to talk with a client of mine, a dad, who said to me, oh, my kid's got all these online friends, and he was sort of mocking it as if they're not real friends. But the relationships our children, tweens, teens, and indeed adults have with people online, they are significant relationships, but we want them to be, especially for our children, healthy and with people that they know, of course. So the research puts us parents, classifies us, if you like, somewhere along this spectrum and labels us. And I just want you to pause and consider, where at the moment are you most showing up? Are you more a limiter, a mentor, or an enabler? I'm just going to talk through really briefly what that might look like. And mostly parents pretty quickly pick as to where they fall along this spectrum. And what I know to be true is often in households, if there's more than one parent in a household or across households, there can be very, very different attitudes and expectations and ideas around technology. So, limiter. If you're a limiter parent, you are often really anxious, concerned, worried about all things technology. You would prefer that your kids are off technology, as Marty said, unplug that Wi-Fi. You might find that you say no a lot. You want to restrict, you want to ban, you put off making decisions. You just prefer maybe wait till they're 25. At the other end of the spectrum, that would be considered enablers. And that's where kids are kind of got to be doing what they want when they want. Maybe you didn't always start off in this space, but maybe that's the space you've got to. If I said to you, what games exactly do your kids play? You may not even be aware of what they've got downloaded on devices. Maybe you weren't aware that ROBLOX was not a game like Minecraft, but rather a platform, as Marty said, with millions of games for your child to access. We know that kids are safest and healthiest when we can show up as a mentor parent. And mentoring is all about building those skills and capacities through conversations, boundaries, and supervision. We know that children are most at risk when we show up at either end, the limiter or the enablers. And the irony is kids of limiters are most at risk because of that sort of bunkered down attitude of parents and keeping kids off and banning and restricting, and technology is all bad and sort of being fearful about it. Kids aren't growing those capacities. It's okay to be a limiter when, a 3-year-old and littlies, a parent said to me the other day, oh, like my little preschooler's got no interest in screens. Should they be more savvy with it by now? No. They'll catch up when they need to. They do not need to be on screens. You can be a limiter in that space when they're really little. It's not helpful for you to stay in that space. Does that make sense? So what I want to do now is really kind of pull apart what it would look like to be a mentor parent, how those conversations, supervision and boundaries will play out in your home. So to start with conversations, I mentioned at the start of this evening how many conversations I've had in the last week. There literally wouldn't be a day that goes by where there's not a conversation about something related to screens. You know, my daughter wasn't happy the other day when she wanted to watch a particular movie, and I always Google Common Sense Media. If it's a movie I don't know about regarding its suitability, those ratings of movies are very wide-ranging and not often so helpful. You know, there's a big range in an M movie, for example, or an MA 15 plus movie. So she wasn't happy that I was going to Google Common Sense Media, and particularly when they recommended it was a 17 plus movie. And I'm like, no. There is a lot of conversations we need to be having with our kids. There's just a bit of a snapshot of some of them. And some of you might be thinking, I just don't want to be talking to my primary school age child about predators. I don't want to be talking about them sending nudes. Surely not in primary school. If you're not ready to be showing up and having these conversations, then they're not ready and you're not ready for them to be online with internet-enabled devices, because these are the challenges, these are the issues, the topics that they're facing, and they need you to mentor them through that. I can't go through all those topics, but tonight I've pulled out 4 that I really want to just chat in a little bit more detail with you. And that first one is just about navigating problematic, tricky situations that our kids will absolutely come across. And whether that's predators, scammers, whether that's cyberbullying, whether that's being exposed to pornography or other adult inappropriate content, we want our kids to know and understand before there's a problem, in advance, what options have they got when that happens. So have a look there. There's some of the options we want our kids to know about. That last one, of course, obvious, critical. We want our kids to seek help. We want them to come to us, to a trusted adult, for help. But what Marty's survey there that he did with a whole, more than 6,000 kids, what I know to be true with working with children and young people is that the majority of kids are saying, no, I won't come to a parent when there's a problem, or probably not. And there's a whole lot of reasons why that's the way they feel. There's some of the reasons that kids had shared. You know, that kid, every possible reason why he's not going to go to his mum, his dad, when there's a problem online. We know there's 3 main reasons actually that get in the way of kids coming to us. One of them is that they just don't think we could help them, and we'll probably make the situation worse. Number 2, that they'll disappoint us. They'll upset us because they've made a mistake. And the last one is being banned. If they suspect that you will ban them, take away a device, their access to a game, they're not coming to you. They'd rather try and manage it on their own. Now, because we know they're the main core reasons that get in the way of kids coming to us, what's most helpful right now before there's a problem is reiterating these 3 messages with our kids. Number 1, that we can help and support them with any problem. And even if you're not tech savvy, I'm not particularly tech savvy, as I shared before. My kids know that. You may not be either, but letting your kids know that you've got resources, you've got support options, like our amazing world-leading government website department, the E-Safety Commissioner. So letting your kids know that there's literally not a problem that we together can't problem solve or sort. Nothing. Number 2, letting your kid know, your child, your children, that you will love and support them no matter what has happened. And let me tell you that kids, when they've made mistakes, when they feel responsible for what's gone on, and often predators will utilise that as an actual mechanism for keeping kids silent by telling children that your parents won't love you, they won't understand you, they'll be so disappointed. It's really important to let our kids know that we know they're going to make mistakes. You know, maybe they've done that thing that you literally told them 50 times not to do. Letting them know that when they make mistakes, which we expect, we will be there to show up and support them no matter what's happened. And the last one is letting our kids know that we will not ban or take the device off them if they come to us with a problem. You know, if you're a limiter parent, when I talked through before, you know that if there's a problem, you would very, very quickly want to whip that device away, ban them from that game. That's it. I told you it was a bad idea. I knew this was not a good plan. But mentor parents, we know and understand that when there's a problem, that's the teachable moment. That's the opportunity with your child to pull out the learnings, to build their skills and capacities so that they can then take those learnings with them. Because when they're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, we're not sitting with them anymore, of course, holding their hand, watching over their shoulder as they're making decisions and choosing how they navigate this digital space. So we're wanting to build those skills and capacities. Now, you can take that device off them. You can ban them for other reasons. Maybe they didn't do their chores. Maybe they didn't get off on time, for example. I'm just talking about not doing that as a response when they come to you with a problem. Does that make sense, that difference there? Okay, conversations around predators and grooming. Marty made it really clear before what that risk is to all of our children. He made it really clear that any space online that's popular with kids is frequented by predators, and that we're needing to show up and support our kids with this risk, something that they're at risk of, if you like. Just reading this quote here, uneducated and naive kids are the easiest prey for an online predator. That's from Christy McVie, who's ex-police WA. Her role and expertise was interviewing children who were victims of child exploitation. That's her clear message, because what I know and she knows is often parents think, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to worry my kids. I don't want to make them anxious. I don't want to scare them about the world and online. But it's actually the flip side of that. We know that kids are safer when they're empowered with understanding that risk exists. And if you think about it, Marty and I often talk about preparing our kids to be in this online space, much like preparing our kids to be for road safety and to be able to eventually independently drive a car. We know that there's amazing freedoms and opportunities that come with driving on the roads, but we also know there are risks. And we don't just say to ourselves, I don't want to frighten my kids about the road. We want them to understand the risks so they can more safely navigate them in an age-appropriate way. Same for this online space. We want to have conversations with our kids with regard to predators about red flags. Now, Marty talks about this in those online every term sessions that he does with the kids. Red flags are those, why is it that person's wanting to give me a whole lot of online currency? Red flag. Why is that person asking a whole lot of personal questions when I don't even know them? Red flag. The other thing, a conversation that's critical, is getting our kids to tune into and be aware of their early warning signs. You know, that gut instinct that we have as humans, that little voice that chirps in, that pops up when something's just not right, something's not safe. The human body is remarkable at communicating to us around safety. But we need to be tuned into that, and then we need to trust what our body is saying. So we want to grow that capacity in our kids. And that might look like, for example, if you're out and about in the world and maybe you leave a place where there's been a really angry, agitated person, and you might just pause with your kids when you can and say, how did it feel? How did your body feel? What did you notice when you left that space, given what we saw that went on? So they're tuning in. You might do the flip side of that when you leave a place with someone really trusted, a beautiful family member, and it's like, how did it feel snuggled up with Nanny? What messages did your body send you about how good that felt, how comfortable, how relaxed and loved? How to block and report. I said that before about options. And then trusted adults. If not you, who can your kids go to? Maybe you're not available. Maybe they feel embarrassed for some reason coming to you. Maybe there's someone else that they could talk to. Kids Helpline, an amazing resource. I mentioned this earlier in the context of cyberbullying and that young person that reached out to Kids Helpline. We don't want our kids, as Marty said, reaching out to the AI bot of Snapchat to get their advice for a particularly personal, sensitive topic. We don't want them just Googling information. We would much prefer they're getting it from a trusted source from professionals. So go online now. It's not just a phone call option anymore with your child or young person before there's a problem. Have a look at Kids Helpline. Support them in navigating that so they know it's an option for them. And if you've got a little kid, one of my clients with her 5-year-old son, she went to Kids Helpline with him. So the two of them went together. As she said to him, you're not the only one who's ever had this particular challenge. So I know somewhere where there's some great support and they work with so many thousands of kids. I wonder what options and ideas they've got in helping us, supporting us in managing that. You can see up on the screen there, it's got Jack Changes the Game. Now, that's an online book that the Australian Federal Police brought out, and you can access that. An age suitability for 5 to 8-year-olds that's raising the issue of predators, opening up the conversation with 5 to 8-year-olds about predators. And you might think, wow, that's young. Guess what? 5 to 8-year-olds are on internet-enabled devices. Marty and I were at a lovely school community last night, and the principal there shared with us that her son, it's one of his favourite books. It's an awesome resource for you to use. In the middle there, we've got an image there of the children in the pictures, and that's a documentary designed for adults, carers and educators, not for children. That was commissioned by the Australian Federal Police back in 2021, really to raise the profile of this risk and the awareness with parents, carers and educators. Something that you might consider watching, deeply disturbing and confronting and distressing, but actually really accurate about the risk that our children are facing online. And the last one there is just how to tackle tricky conversations, which was a Facebook online chat that Marty and I recorded a couple of years ago. I don't have the time tonight to kind of deep dive into some of the conversations I've had with my kids, what I share with clients to use in their families. There's just a little bit more of a resource that you might want to access to build on whatever conversations you're already having or to start some of those conversations. Okay. Pornography and sexualized content. You've heard from us this evening that it's not a matter of if your child will see this content, but when. And I said to you about us needing to have conversations so that our children, we are their main sexuality educators. But if I ask all the hundreds and hundreds of you listening in live right now and those of you watching the replay, who had a comprehensive sexuality education from their parents? Which of you listening right now had really open, honest, transparent, helpful conversations with your parents about all things sexuality when you were growing up? What I know from all the school communities that Marty and I visit is when we look out into that audience, sometimes there's one parent going, yep, I did, or none, meaning the majority of us know we didn't have those sort of chats with our parents. So we don't have a template to go back to. We can't say, oh, I remember that amazing conversation that mum had with me. It was so helpful to do with sex and sexuality or pornography. I think I'll have a similar chat with my child. Some of you may have had parents that spoke up with regard to this topic, but may have been centered around, you know, making you afraid and fearful, might have been centered around shame. I know that to be true. So we need to step up. We've got a resource that I'd love to recommend to you. Vanessa Hamilton, she's a Melbourne-based sexuality educator. She's a mum, nurse background. She's got a free podcast that you can listen to get more information as to how do you answer that question from your kid? How do you raise that topic with your child? What words do you even say? What language is best? And now she's got a print copy, an actual book that you can order And Marty will put that in the chat now and at the end of the session as well, so that you can order that resource. There's other places and spaces there, like, as I said, that government department we've got access to as Australian citizens, the eSafety Commissioner, where you can access, again, how to have some of those that feel really hard to have conversations. Okay, body image. Showing up as a mentor parent means having conversations about body image. Why? Because Marty said our kids are consuming a lot of content. The young people that I work with are collecting up so much messaging, so many strong influences around body image. So, there's young people that 7-year-olds that want to get teeth whitening. There's tweens considering what plastic surgery options they want. Tweens spending all their pocket money on beauty products. Young boys in primary school wanting to buy supplements so that they can, and what are they? I've just had a mental blank on, vitamin supplements to grow their muscles so they can bodybuild in primary school. Just have a look at this quote here. Hating our bodies is something that we learn, and it sure as hell is something that we can unlearn. We are not born as humans hating upon our bodies, feeling dissatisfied with our bodies, unhappy with our bodies. But the young people today, more than ever before, are collecting up an enormous barrage of information and ideas and content that's feeding them messages around how their body should look. So we need to be a voice in this space. Here's a resource that I'd love you to consider. Taryn Brumfitt, Australian of the Year, brought this out last year. Am I up to? She brought out Embrace a few years ago that was all around adults and body image, but this one's particularly about kids and body image. Now, the age range, it's a very rough age range. You know your child's age and stage and where they're up to. What I would love you to do is you watch it first. If you decide it's not where they're up to, it will definitely give you resources and information about having conversations. Or you'll decide, yep, this is perfect for my child, and sit with them and watch it with them. I took a whole carload of kids, 11-year-olds, to watch this last year at a movie screening that we had at Inform and Empower. And these are too cool for school 11-year-olds. And I thought, wow, if this is too preachy or too trying to be educational, they're just going to, run a mile from that and tune out. But they were absolutely engaged. It's done in a really clever, engaging way, as I said, that invites conversation and opens up conversation. Okay, so having conversations. I'm spelling out to you, reminding you, reinforcing what you're probably a lot of you already doing. And I hope tonight, whilst you're listening, you're celebrating the good stuff that's happening in your family. I spend a lot of time reminding families and parents that I work with to look and pay attention to the good stuff that's already happening in their family. Because when was the last time you paused and went, wow, good parenting by me. Amazing job I just did in managing that situation. Often parents sort of giggle, laugh, I don't know when I did that. But if I ask you, when was the last time you criticised yourself as a parent, told yourself you weren't good enough, that you should have been more patient, you shouldn't have forgotten that thing, you should have not lost your temper? We're very quick to do that. So please know and focus on the good stuff that's happening, and know that tonight is just an opportunity to build upon that. So back to conversations. When you're having conversations, I just thought I would share with you some of the things that I've really anchored myself to, and that I know when I anchor myself to these, so much better conversations happen. The first one is, number one, considering what you want to say. Because when we're particularly anxious, if you haven't noticed, or stressed about something or worried about something, what we tend to do to our kids is blah, 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 and we go on and on and on. And kids are like, literally, I think they hear blah, 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 blah. Are you finished? Done? So pick one thing, pick one main message that you really want to land in this conversation. What's the main focus? Then you might want to use curious questions, one of my favorites. You know what? Kids that I've worked with in the last 20 years, they don't like family meetings. They don't like when they hear the words, right, I need to talk to you about something. Sit down, we need to have a chat. What can be, much more inviting and opening up conversation, and they're less likely to get defensive, is just using these curious questions, particularly with our kids when they're getting that bit older into the tween years. But you might have a particularly savvy pre-tween. You might say to them, now, I heard from a friend at work, her daughter's the same age as you. And when she was online, this thing happened. And I wonder what you would do if you came across that. Or I wonder how you would manage if you're at a friend's house and they wanted to watch an R-rated movie. They wanted to watch a movie that you knew was not appropriate. How would you manage that? What would you say? Imagine if you were online. I just want to see, because I heard about this, I read about this kid online where it happened to them. If you heard one of your friends being bullied online, being left out of something, what would you do? Blah, 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 blah. The what if, the last one there's the what if game. What if you were, and checking in, it's your opportunity to find out where they're up to with their skills and capacities. And it'll highlight where you might need to jump in to support them with ideas like, I wonder if you tried, could you imagine saying this? And you're growing and building capacities. That's our job as a mentor parent. Okay, direct information. Sometimes it's not about those curious questions. It's about our kids needing direct information, often because there's been a problem. Maybe something's happened at school. Maybe something's happened in the family. You're aware of them being exposed to something. So when they're in the car, captive audience, they can't escape. You might say to them, right, now I need to share something with you. You don't need to say anything. I just need you to listen. Or you might say, right, a few months ago, we talked about this to do with sex, but now I also need to explain something else that I know will be helpful for you to know. You don't have to say anything, just listen, and off you go. Does that make sense? Next, what I wanted to get to was the when, and I'm not sure if you heard this, so a super quick recap is when matters. Tired and hungry kids, not a good time to have a conversation. If your kid's not a morning person, not a good time to have a conversation. The time of the day matters. Consider that. Privacy matters. We don't want, younger siblings necessarily around to hear a particular conversation. I did share with the school community we visited last night a memory that I remember very clearly, driving along in the car with my, would have been 8 or 9-year-old son and a whole group of his mates. I've got one of those big bus cars that heaps of kids. Driving along, and he calls out, Mum, what's masturbation? Pronunciation. I'm like, masturbation. Okay. And I thought to myself, I don't think it's my job to educate all this car full of kids to do with this topic right now. So I said to him, awesome question. Happy to chat about it later when we've got a bit more time and space. Put the music back on and off I drove. The last one I've got there is calm. And calm is about, I know that sometimes we might be really upset at our child. We might be really angry at what's happened with another child. We're humans, and above all, we're parents, and we can have big, big, wild feelings when it comes to our kids. Tip that out first with another adult. Our aim is not to bring all of our big, big feelings and tip it on our kids, because it really gets in the way of them hearing the message we want them to hear. Just to be clear, are they perfect parents that never tip on their kids in that manner? No, there's not. But is it something we can be aware of? And as I said, choose to tip out on another adult so that the intensity of your feelings might go from a 9.5 and you can show up to the conversation with a 3 out of 10 and a bit more calm. Okay, where to have these conversations? You know some of these. I know you'll be listening going, yep, that's when I often have a chat with my child. Movement. having another activity whilst you're having a conversation. Movement's very regulating, very soothing for us, and it just can take away that intensity of the conversation. So it doesn't matter what. Gosh, I've had a lot of chats with my kids over the years when we've been watching a movie or a show together. You know, something a character will do, and you'll be like, oh, what would you do? Would you have done the same? Would you have felt comfortable saying that? What do you think of the fact that she spoke up in that way? What do you think about the fact that he chose blah, 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 blah? Now, one thing I want to say, not so much about movement and having an activity when you chat, but at bedtime. Who listening to me right now live or listening to the replay has got one of those kids that when it's bedtime and you're ready to tap out, day nearly done, that's when they want to open up their deepest, darkest thoughts. That's when they've got 55,000 questions and you're like, I guess it's my shout out to you. If you know you've got one of those kids, please factor that in. Schedule that time into your day so that you don't spend every day for years upon years creeping in thinking, please don't ask me, please don't say anything, can I just go to bed? Build that into your routine. Start the bedtime routine even earlier to honour and give them that space, be knowing that that's when they're going to be most receptive to those conversations. Marty, with his online work with your kids, those incursions, the team at Inform and Empower, we always send out after each session a parent-carer tip sheet. Basically gives you the heads up for what they learnt about and then literally conversation starters. So that if you've got a kid where you say, oh, what happened with that incursion? I don't know, nothing. And they're not up for talking because they're tired and hungry. You've got that insight, that intel to be able to open up conversations and have that shared language around what you know they just learned about. Okay, supervision. Supervision is a key to being a mentor parent, and we know that that's critical because of how it minimises the risk. Predators, cyberbullying, adult content, pornography. When we're talking about supervision, it's the physical supervision, having devices only in the communal areas of your home. Absolutely. Australian Federal Police, if they were presenting right now, conversations and not having devices in bedrooms or bathrooms for primary school age kids would be their two main takeaways, keeping kids safer. I want to ask Marty to jump in now and talk to you as we've promised, and I know there's been a number of questions in the chat about digital supervision, parental controls. I'm conscious of the time because of our little couple of tech issues. We might end up going just a few minutes over. It probably won't be more than 5 minutes. So if you're able to hang in there for the end of the session, please do that. If you need to come back, just know that that replay will be available.
Thanks, Carly. So let's dig into these parental control settings that many families might already be using. Some, they might be brand new for some of you. Highly recommend Apple. Apple, don't work for them, don't get any commission, but what they do well is their screen time settings that you might already be aware of, but it allows iPads and iPhones, if they're being used by kids, to be supervised digitally. So you can put restrictions on the time, the apps that can be used, and you can set that all up from your device. So you've got the ability to modify and then change them as kids get older and really work together before allowing them access to the whole entire internet and each and every app. So great suggestion would be a first phone using screen time to make sure they don't have everything. There is a Android version equivalent they call Family Link as well, Google Family Link, that does similar functions, not quite as amazing. Now, ROBLOX, I've said a few times, please, if you've got ROBLOX in your home, this is an important one. The settings called account restrictions. You can see there's a screenshot, and when we share all this information, you can jump on our website and find the blog post where I step you through how to do this. 10 minutes of your day very well spent, because you're able to turn it on, set the restrictions with a PIN number so your clever kids can't jump in there and disable them. And it, number one, restricts the games they can access to a more curated collection. So it's not amazing the way they curate it, but it is tenfold better than having access to every game. But you can also disable the chat, which removes that ability for your kids to be communicating with each and every other player, adult, teen, and child alike. Gaming consoles, they all come built in with some parental controls, but they really need to be tweaked and adjusted. So just my little shout out and reminder that if you've got gaming consoles, you might like to get back in and just make sure they're set up correctly. YouTube Kids. YouTube Kids is the best starting point for watching videos. ABC Kids is even better when it's actually made for kids, and that's where Bluey lives, of course. But YouTube Kids is a place, if you haven't already discovered it, a really good starting point, because you can restrict the channels they watch, you can take off search, and the videos that appear on there are much more designed for a younger audience. YouTube restricted mode is a setting that lives on any device with YouTube. So if you've got a smart TV, if you have iPads, phones that kids are using to watch YouTube, strongly suggest this little setting. It's buried away, but a quick Google search and you'll be able to find how to locate it. Restricted mode takes the search results and takes off the more mature content. Autoplay is a little suggestion, and we talk to the kids about this in a lot of our sessions around healthy habits and building really sort of mindful use of technology. So yeah, we can use tech, but we want to be thinking about it and not just allowing the tech to control us. Autoplay is where one video finishes and the next one begins. Turn that off. Social media has a whole host. Each of the platforms have some different versions of what they call parental controls. So my suggestion is, without going into each one in detail right now, if you are making the decision to allow any of these platforms for your kids of any age, when you first do, please don't go from 0 to 100 where they get access to everything, but have a look at how you can best support them in the more parental restricted versions of these apps that is available. Each one's a little bit different. We often get asked, well, where and how should their first steps into the messaging world be? It's Messenger Kids, because it is designed for under 13s. So if you've got kids using this already, great, stick with it as long as possible, because as you know, you've got visibility, you can put time restrictions. It's a great place for them to learn the craft, make mistakes. They're going to make them at this age, but it's a place for conversations for you as well. And then, of course, kids, because they're clever and they're curious and they talk to each other, they're going to search this, how to get around parental controls. And you can see there's 141 million results. So this is where I hand back over to Carly just to reinforce that any parental controls and settings are useful. But for the last 5 minutes tonight, Carly's going to step us through that last piece of the puzzle, which is setting up some restrictions some boundaries in your home and how that can be done.
Okay, so setting up and creating a plan so that those expectations are clear. What I know working with so many families is there's often a lot of conflict. And I know a lot of you listening live this evening or watching the replay, you might be experiencing a whole lot of conflict getting kids off screens and setting up guidelines around screens. So just my little shout out. Guess what? There are no perfect families with perfect plans, with perfect kids following those plans. However, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, meaning we're not going to stick to the boundaries. Our kids are less likely to stick to the boundaries unless we make them clear. So when you're creating that plan or resetting and reviewing a plan that you've already got in place, consider what apps are they allowed to watch YouTube? Doesn't need to be on restricted mode, only on the TV in the lounge room. What about playing ROBLOX? Is that appropriate once restricted mode's put in place? Where they play, what about when they're in the car for short trips versus, a long holiday trip? So there's not the day-to-day debating about it. Devices out of bedrooms. What's the expectation when you're at the dinner table, eating a meal together? Where do devices go overnight? What's the plan around weekends versus weekdays? What about play dates when friends are over? What about if grandparents, babysitters are minding them? Lots of kids will take advantage of grandparents often not being so tech savvy and get away with watching and doing things that they know are not okay. Before school, before bed, Marty talks to the kids. A beautiful little catchphrase that I'd love you to use in your family is an hour before dream time, finish up your screen time. So what's brain-based, what we know and understand about human brains is all of them, not just little people's brains, but all of us, is that hour, that window, an hour before going to sleep. It's not ideal to be on screens for a lot of reasons. So it's supporting our kids in building habits of other activities, filling that time before they're wanting to go to sleep. And the last one is how much. When you're thinking about your plan, what's okay? A lot of parents ask Marty and I, how many hours is okay for my 4-year-old or my 7-year-old? Or what I want you to consider is balance, because what type of screen time matters. I can't give you a magic number. You know, it's like with road safety. There's not one age that all kids can cross the road safely. There's not one magic number with regard to screen time, because you might have a kid playing for 3 hours on the weekend, one of those R-rated games like Grand Theft Auto, GTA for 3 hours, talking to random adults. Well, that's very different than 3 hours playing an age-appropriate game, having a break after every hour, which we know is recommended for healthy brains. Get off, have a break, come back on for another hour maybe, and engaging with friends that are their age and not unknown people. The other thing to consider with how much is looking at the bigger picture. Something Marty's talked about with the kids just in the recent sessions this term is green time, balancing screen time and green time. And when we're talking about green time, it's about all those things that help our kids grow. Outside time in nature, active and moving their bodies, mindfulness and meditation, social interaction with other humans, reading time. And the one there that's probably not so self-explanatory, not so clear, we call unstructured time. Your kids will probably call this boring time, because this is when you step up as a mentor parent. You set that boundary according to your family plan. Off screens. No one's on a screen until 5 o'clock. Go and find something to do. And if, like one of my boys who used to, especially when he was younger, get off the computer and then he'd kind of wander over to the couch, pick up the remote, I'd be like, no. And no screens, not just a change of screens, no screens. And you'll hear, oh, it's boring. There's nothing to do. It's stupid. My best friend's on now. I just want to watch the last bit of this. Ignore. Tune it out. Put your earpods in. Put some music on. Kids need to be bored, because it's during that boredom that activates the parts of the brain that developmentally right now are primed to grow and expand, to explore and be creative. And those parts of the brain don't get an opportunity to light up and expand unless kids do have those opportunities of unstructured time. What type of green time? Often parents say it's so hard to get kids off screens. It can be really difficult to get them into and enjoying those green time activities, off screens onto green time. I'll ask you to consider their why. Each and every one of our kids can have a really different reason as to why they want to be on screens. For some of our kids, like my daughter, it's all about the social connection. That's 95% of what she does online is around social. For some of our kids, it's not social. It's actually about the adrenaline, the novelty seeking, the excitement. For some kids, it's around competency. It's around that mastery, the feel good at being really good at something. They might struggle socially offline in the real world. They might struggle with their learning at school, but online, they're good at it. And the last one is about regulation. Lots of our kids, and indeed us as adults, we can use screen time as a regulation tool, a self-soothing tool, especially often some beautiful neurodivergent brains might seek out screen time for that purpose. So if you know what their why is, then offering that, filling that cup in green time can be most helpful, and it can make that transition most easeful. Bottom line is, make those boundaries explicit, put them up on display. That was shared by a family who came to one of our sessions, not the Magical Unicorn family, but their bottom lines. Stick it up put it on a whiteboard, put it on a poster. You might have different ones if there's quite an age range difference in your family. That's appropriate. Okay, I'll invite Marty in for the last bit, but just back to what I said at the start. What is something, after hearing the session tonight live or the replay, what might you start doing an experiment with that? And it might be putting up the whiteboard with that family plan. What are you going to pause on reflection that's not okay, no longer working in your family? And maybe that's about saying no devices in bedrooms. And the last one, what are you going to keep going with? That could be a whole lot of conversations that you've started and know you need to have more of. All right.
Okay, as we wrap up tonight, we often get asked where to for more information. Beacon is a great little free app that is available, has answers to all your little questions, great little search function worth having as a pocket guide. eSafety, as Carly has mentioned tonight, is your one-stop shop, the Australian government portal, especially knowing they're there if you need to report or troubleshoot something that is particularly problematic. It's the place to go to. As parents and carers, there is also a time where we're the ones needing that help and support. So there are options. Please reach out if anything this evening has led you down the path looking for more supports. I've put a link in there, that book we often get asked about, how to open up those conversations around sexuality with our kids. There's a great book that has been highlighted already by Carly. The link is in the chat. If you're interested in purchasing that, there's a little discount code. We will make available the replay. We'll send a link to all the slides via your school community. So keep an eye out on your communication from the school. I'm not sure there are any questions that had come through. If there were, we'll have a browse through. But if there's no questions you're waiting on, thank you so much. And thank you particularly. Give a shout out to your principals and your school community for putting on this evening, because their investment in the student sessions and tonight is testament to their commitment to partner with you in this space. So thank you to all our great schools. It's been a pleasure from Carly and I. We'll stick around a little bit if there's any questions, but otherwise, have an amazing rest of your Thursday. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.